All Things Alice. This podcast will explore the cultural phenomenon of Alice in Wonderland as artistic landmark and global symbol of inspiration and imagination. I'm your host, Frank Beddor, the author of the Looking Glass Wars trilogy. Let's explore, what is it about Alice? Hey everybody, welcome back to All Things Alice. Today I'm with my savant, creative wife, Teresa Lin.
You really enjoy saying that, don't you? Putting the Beddor in there.
I do. But today we're going to use Alice as a muse, as a metaphor for creativity as it relates to a separate project, a book project that I'm very proud of. I had nothing to do with the writing of this book, but I did have something to do with the publishing of this book. So I'll give you a little background. I have a friend who's an author who's written a number of books. His first book was published through Simon & Schuster, and he had about 90 pages of a manuscript called Glitch. And we went to lunch. He asked me to read the pages. I kind of fell in love with the concept, and I kept asking him, hey, when can I read more pages? So over time, he would share pages as he felt confident in the work. And at the end of the day, when he finished the novel, I blurted out, I would like to help you publish this book. And at the time, I was working on Hatter Madigan, Ghost in the Hatbox, and I wanted to start a small publishing company called Automatic Publishing. And I decided that Eric's book, his name's Eric Laster, would be the first book that we would publish under the new imprint. And it was an amazing creative experience. But at the same time that we were working, I was working with Eric on the book, I was also thinking about adapting the novel as a television show. And that's what Teresa and I are here to talk about, sort of the process of taking a literary work and what choices you make in terms of the book becoming viable as a TV property. So the name of Eric Laster's book is Static. It was originally Glitch, but then we realized that there was a number of books out in the marketplace called Glitch, and unfortunately we didn't realize that until we did a number of covers, some really interesting covers. But we finally landed on Static, and I want to tell you a little bit about the book. It's a coming-of-age murder mystery, young adult novel. And I'm just going to read to you the book jacket description so you get a flavor of how Eric wanted the book to be described. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we've tweaked it for the television show. So it goes like this. When Curtis Brooks starts receiving phone calls from his older brother Wilt, who's been dead a week, he's sure it's to help him find evidence that will lead to the murderer's arrest. But Wilt claims he wasn't murdered. His calling, meant to help him adjust, is standard protocol for the newly deceased at the Aftermart, a kind of inescapable, ever-expanding Walmart filled with discontinued products. Wilt's death is ruled a homicide. Curtis embarks on a dangerous plan to find the killer, which soon has him scheming against a billionaire and floundering towards love with his brother's ex-girlfriend, Susie, all while struggling through high school and his single mom's poor choices. Why does Wilt help Curtis win over Susie, even as he organizes a rebellion at the Aftermart? Who's wanted him dead? Curtis risks his life to answer these questions, in the process forging a bond with his brother unlike any they've ever had. Okay, that's a short description. One of the things that I really fell in love with was the relationship between the two brothers, because in the beginning of the book, they're very estranged. And by the end of the book, in terms of helping each other, they've come to really appreciate and love each other in a much deeper way. Having said all of that, which is a lot, I'm going to let Teresa sort of read you the pitch line for the television show, and then we're going to get into some of the reasons we made these decisions, choices and changes.
Well, what Frank talked about in terms of a brother story, we evolved into a brother-sister story. And really, we wanted to drop in on the point of view and the sort of the unreliable narrator from now who was Curtis is now Danny. Danny is a 16-year-old who takes on her brother Wilt's murder mystery so his soul can move on in the aftermath. Now we had to really hone in on what the aftermath was, and for the show purposes of the show, the aftermath became a retail way station where souls shop until they find the item that resolves their death. Through a series of calls that only they can hear, they must work together through absurd, comedic, and dangerous circumstances to catch the bad guys, bringing the family back together and learning the most challenging lessons about love. What I love about what drives when we're conceptualizing for a show, we're always thinking about what the engine is. What is driving the show forward? What are the characters going through? And that would create an arc for them. How do they change and how are they tested through the show? And I think in the book, the aftermath, there were souls were shopping, but they went to counseling, and there wasn't a way where the shopping connected to the character sense of resolution.
Well, yeah, what you're talking about is there is a particular item that has a deep resonance meaning for them, which is a bit of a clue to why they haven't left this way station. And in resolving that mystery, then that helps them to transition to wherever they're going to transition. And one of the big things about the book and the show is setting up the mystery. And for
the mystery in both places.
In both places,
right.
absolutely.
So why Wilt was murdered and what his life, as Danny, the 16-year-old sister, digs into her brother's story, she finds out this whole world and this whole life that her brother had that she didn't know about.
But one of the things that's not in the book that you introduced, separate from having a brother-sister story, was Danny is really into murder mystery television shows.
Yeah, one of the things that we really had fun setting up is coloring in Danny's character. And, in creating the tone for the show, we really wanted to make her an unreliable narrator, somebody who's obsessed with solving murder mysteries, somebody who had been on medication her whole life and then suddenly decides that she's going to come off of her meds and she's going to take life by the horns and do this one thing for her brother. And so through her lens, you have her enthusiastic deep dive into, creating a case out of her brother's death that may not be real. But as we follow her into the story, the details of what her brother was involved in becomes larger than life.
But what's really fun is her two friends who are really supporting her because she's grieving, and they think she's going through these many different levels of grief.
Right.
And so when
7 steps of grieving, and they're trying to name it for her. And of course, she has these severe mood swings, and they're playing along in support of her while they're on this, murder mystery solving case, digging into places digitally and going, sort of behind the scenes.
But at first they don't believe her, and
Right.
It's really amusing because they're speculating on what's going on with her. And, they're two boys that got a lot of hormones and, not that interested in exactly what she's interested in. But eventually they come around to believe that what's happening is real for her.
Yes, and
And
so
so
there's a whimsical and mischievous
yes.
element to this tone of the show, and then on the flip side, with the supernatural or the paranormal, you have the aftermath that feels as grounded as going into a Target today, where you have people and that have hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in the afterlife with people who are obeying or working for the woo. And these people it's just a mirror, it's a mirror of our world.
What's the woo
The woo is sort of the organizing powers
of the aftermath?
of the aftermath.
One of the things that feedback that Eric and I would often get from Comic-Cons, which we were promoting his book, or school events, was readers were really interested in the aftermath, and they were interested in how the aftermath works and the characters in the aftermath. And so in the television show, we decided to explore that and give equal weight to Danny in our world and Wilt in the aftermath.
Right.
And in the novel, it's the other way around.
It started in the aftermath in the novel started as just a place for discontinued items. And so our work as part of one of the ways that we thought this would make a good engine is if the things in the aftermath resonated with these characters and what, had sentimental or energetic, value to wherever this person, the soul is stuck. And so, it could be an egg timer. It could be, in the book, it could be an action figure, and something that is connected to a memory where it's unresolved. And so when you find your item, you resolve, and you're able to flash back into that memory, then you can check out essentially.
I still want to find a character that his item or her item is the toilet with the clear back, so that it's a
tank
fishbowl.
has an aquarium.
The tank has an
Yep.
aquarium.
Yes.
That was
Well, we had a lot of fun researching for the show because we got to look up a lot of discontinued items from the 70s and 80s that were,
eight tracks. I mean, things that people don't even, that young adults wouldn't even know about. Certainly my kids don't know what an 8-track, didn't know what an 8-track was, but all sorts of funny toys and concepts. So that's been fun. So we have we're finding shelves for some of our favorite nostalgic.
Yeah, and it was fun thinking about how the aftermath would be organized. And we came up with maybe it would be organized by decades, by eras. And I certainly really enjoy thinking about, the difference between, our experience in the analog world versus the digital world and how that's changed, because they're the only way that Wilt and Danny are communicating to each other is through a smartphone. Now that originally it wasn't a smartphone, I don't believe. It was a different.
It was a smartphone. It's on the cover of the of Static. So it's a phone.
I see. It was a phone.
But what happened is only Danny could hear him.
Yes.
Well,
And everybody else
heard
hears
static.
only static.
So
Right.
hence the name.
Right. So it was a way for them to try to jerry rig, other discontinued items to try to keep the connection going.
Why don't you talk a little bit about why you thought it would be better to have a brother-sister story versus two brothers? What that sort of dynamic in terms of how different they might be. It sort of plays itself out when when Wilt is in the beginning with Susie, the girlfriend, and they're a little bit older, they're a couple years older, and they're completely ignoring her, and they have a sexual life together, and Danny is like coming in and interrupting, and it gives it a little bit different flavor.
Oh, yeah. I think Danny has always been on the outside of love. I think her obsession in the beginning with solving murder mysteries and reading science fiction and fantasy, I think she's always been curious about what life feels like for the people on the other side. And even though her brother is one of the most popular kids at school, she's always lived on the fringe, and maybe it's because of her medication and whatever childhood trauma she's been holding on to and has repressed these feelings. I think when her brother dies and he was the man of the house, she rises to the occasion, and she starts to feel this need to do something. And I think there was something interesting for me about her relationship with Susie that goes beyond there is an attraction there, an attraction to life, attraction to being, alive and being seen and being wanted and desired. And I think for her, Susie and Wilt carried that sort of had that meaning for her, and she wanted to step into what her brother had and perhaps keep that alive.
And one of the other things that we were interested in doing is maximizing the setting. And we thought Los Angeles would be a good setting because it's very diverse. And it's not in the novel, you don't know what
with her
the diversity, the
ethnicity.
ethnic, yeah. And so because it's a television show, we needed to get real specific. And so, why don't you talk a little bit about.
One of the choices that we made about the show was to make the kids biracial, where her estranged father, who comes back into her life, is African American, and her mother is Korean. And there are I thought it was really interesting to shine a light on the biracial families and the coupling between African American and Koreans. It's typically in Los Angeles. We have a large Koreatown, and I thought that would be really interesting to have some of the underworld goings on happen around there and where they were growing up, and that using that to color in some of her choices and the places that she goes to do her investigating.
After working on the outline and conceptualizing these changes, then it's the writing process. And I'm interested in how you brought these choices together when you approached the script, the pilot for the show.
Well, we had a lot of different evolutions and drafts to the show idea, but the anchor and the primary piece of it is always Danny's character, and her POV, telling the story through her lens and setting up her unreliable narrator, her thought process, letting us in on her thought process and being able to see her spying, on her neighbors and creating this big story out of nothing, and having her be that person, sort of the girl who cried wolf one too many times, and that she's a problem.
Yeah, you came up with that great scene, which was like a rear window scene to open up the pilot, and it caused a lot of havoc at the apartment complex for her mother, for the neighbor. A detective showed up, a detective who ultimately has a love interest with her mom.
Right. So
there was a lot of that.
Yeah. So anchoring, it's for me a lot about what makes a show great is creating characters that people want to spend time with and people want to root for. And if you can create somebody who's lovable, and even though they're awkward and weird and strange, and I mean, especially if they're awkward, weird, and strange, because we all, in some ways, feel that way inside, to make those aspects of herself feel relatable and accessible.
And one of the ways that
going for.
And one of the ways that we accentuated the unreliable narrator is that she was on medication and seeing a therapist.
Yes.
And
so you have her therapist weighing in on her her, instability and her need to stay on her medication. And there is a clear point in the script, in the pilot, where she flushes it all down the toilet and decides to go cold turkey. And there's an aspect to the show that deals with mental health, and it deals with grief, and it deals with growing up in a broken family, and it deals with feeling estranged from your own family and making choices about how to get back to a place where you understand each other. And it's, between family members, there can be an ocean of division and silence and disconnect, as most of us can understand at one point or another. And it's about this disconnection that they're trying, through solving the murder mystery and through connecting with Wilt now that he's dead and in the aftermath. And now Danny wants to do something so that his soul can move on. And reconnecting with her mother is also a big piece of this. It's like, what defines family? What defines, that connective tissue between your family members when life has gotten so far away from you and things feel so hard? What are the things that we do that brings us back together, or that we continually, that where we try?
It's interesting, all the things you're saying, because I think it's all true in the story, and it's true in the pilot, but that's all subtextual, and that makes good writing, because you need that bubbly, attractive, like the whimsy of the aftermath, the kind of absurdity of the phone call. The two friends, Lou and Jeremy, who are, they're in high school, and this stuff is funny to them. And the dynamic between Susie, who's lost somebody, and everybody mourning, but wanting to post on Instagram about it. It's like an in thing to do.
Right.
And so there's really a high school coming of age angst, funny kind of, what's the British show that we were referencing?
Sex Education.
Sex Education. There was Sex Education was,
not as raunchy as Sex Education, but certainly the tone and the humor and the melodrama between the characters.
Melodrama, yeah.
And the levity. I think there's a lightness to the way their friends show up for each other, and in spite of all the dark stuff that they find out, and the clues. I think that her getting excited about finding clues that take us from episode to episode, I think those reveals are fun to do.
Well,
Because
also, how about Wilt is somehow helping helping Danny like meet up with Susie. Like he's sort of encouraging it, and of course she's the most beautiful girl in high school. So Lou and Jeremy are shocked when Danny goes and even starts to talk to Susie. So that whole relationship thing is, and as you pointed out, there's a connection. Ultimately, there's a connection between them, an attraction between them, which is interesting.
Well, I think the attractions to, on a soul level, and also with gender, with two girls being attracted to each other, I think it's really relevant now in talking about, what is attraction, what is,
because they both loved,
okay.
they both
yeah, they
loved
both
Wilt,
love this, yeah,
the
that's
brother. Right. So, you could pitch this as a comedy.
Oh, absolutely. We would do, it's a dramedy, but definitely there's a lot of whimsical and elements to it. We were thinking of, tonally, we're thinking of the movie Ghost.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't remember, that was Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore.
And you have Sean, the counselor in the aftermath, who's very uptight but comedic and trying to control what is uncontrollable.
Yeah, so there's parts of the aftermath that's structured a bit like The Good Place. and there's a certain hierarchy and structure that mirrors, and bureaucracy that mirrors our world. But for the characters, I think if you think about how funny it was in Ghost when Whoopi Goldberg's going around hearing ghosts and no one believes her, and she just looks like a lunatic. In writing Danny's character, I thought a lot about her character and how convinced she is because she really does hear Wilt and she can't believe that nobody else does, and she's just going for it anyway. And that just makes her a really lovable character to me.
And then we've spoken to a couple of directors, and we've landed on a director that we're going to be working with. I haven't gotten the approval from him to talk about him, so I'm not going to say
Yeah,
anything.
we're excited to have a hot director attached.
But he brings a look and feel to the project that I think is really unique, especially in the aftermath. What was that toy shop, that Asian, what we referenced? I forget the name.
Meow Wolf?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a Meow Wolf exhibit in Vegas, and it has a very similar quality to the Meow Wolf exhibit, where there's corridors that go to nowhere and doors open to no place, and things are sectioned and
Ridiculously
categorized.
colorful and
Yeah, and there's levels. Of course there are levels. There's always levels to the aftermath, and of course there's the superficial stuff, and then there's those the corridors that lead to another level, and then beyond you see souls check out from the aftermath and they go beyond it, and so of course there's beyond the aftermath and what the afterlife looks like. We have a great way into the second season. The first season works really well.
We're very optimistic.
We really love the idea of solving murder mysteries or deaths, resolving deaths from the other side. So the idea is that Wilt and his friends in the aftermath learns and stabilizes a technology that allows them to connect with the living, and with Danny on the side of the living and Wilt on the side of the souls, they start to resolve cases, murder mysteries, or deaths from both sides. So we're very excited about that part of it.
So we're getting back to this. Just having this conversation is reigniting a kind of passion for the project. With the pandemic and then the writer's strike and actor's strike, a lot of projects had been put on hold, and now people are trying to find their way. And this is a young adult novel, therefore it's a young adult show, but I see a lot of these on Netflix and on other networks. So we are taking the material as we've conceived it, and with our hot, young, talented director, and we're going to go out and sell it, and hope that next time we talk about Static, we're in pre-production or shooting the show. So
hope to share some more good news with you guys.
And we'll post some fun images from the aftermath, nostalgic pieces that are amusing and absurd, and old technologies that...
Well, you hit on a great word, nostalgia. I think this show was primarily, when we were doing a deeper dive in here, it was so much about nostalgia, about the memories that we hold on to and the experiences that we have that, are encapsulated within certain things, of pop culture, what we're nostalgic for.
So if anybody's curious, before the show is produced, if they'd like to read the novel, you can pick it up on Amazon, I'm sure, or frankbeddor.com. I have a few copies left if you'd like to check it out. Thank you, Teresa, for sharing your insight.
Always a pleasure.
I love
fun. Talking about our process.
It's always fun to talk about getting from point A to point B and trying to make progress as creative. So I guess I'm going to have to start a new podcast, All Things Creative, with Teresa Lin.
Well, we'll make sure to keep the content flowing. Yeah. We'll keep creating things so that we have something to talk about.
You know, we're recording. We're still recording, and you're laughing because hey everybody, I want Teresa to talk about all the various projects across all the various genres that she writes in. In particular, I want her to talk about her epic space opera.
We're gonna need a different podcast for that one.
All right.
I spent a long time conceiving it and had a lot of fun. But science fiction is one of my favorite genres.
Well, we'll come back to that. So stay tuned.
I would love to share that with you.
Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Until next week, or 2 weeks from now. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.